All right, good afternoon, everybody. Before I begin, I did want to draw your attention to the menu bar that Zoom has. If you're on your desktop, you will see a globe. And you click on that globe, you can choose that you're going to listen to in English because we do have interpretation available tonight from English to Spanish and vice versa. And we do this because we believe that besides that everyone has the right to breathe clean air, we also believe that you should be able to speak and understand the language that you're most comfortable in. And so, if and so the interpretation is on, and y'all can click on to English. But that is also that if somebody is speaking in Spanish, then you'll be able to hear the interpretation. And I do ask that y'all speak in a moderate pace and clearly so that our interpreter is able to support tonight. All right. And so today we are talking about Minnitex. I'm sorry. We are talking about a concrete batch plant that is called Torres Brothers Ready Mix that is located in the Minnitex area. It's located on 4247 Fuqua Street, and they are up for a permit renewal. So we will review what a concrete batch plant is and their health impacts. We'll review the TCEQ process and how you submit your public comments as well as testimony. And then I'll also review ways that you can submit your environmental complaints to TCEQ because, as we know, Houston is inundated currently with concrete batch plants and a lot of facilities that are polluting in Houston. And next slide, please. Okay. And in the Minnitex area, I did want to give a brief history of or a demographics of the Minnitex area. So there are lots when you're in the Minnitex area. There are lots of land, and people are able to even have farms, and so it is a very beautiful area with trees. But unfortunately, it has started getting a little bit more industrialized. So you'll have truck yards as well as these concrete batch plants that are kind of hidden behind these trees. And I will definitely also send y'all the pictures of the Minnitex area as well. But with that, I will give the floor to Dr. Uwak to explain to us what concrete batch plants are and why we should care about this, and especially protecting our communities against the impacts of air pollution. And then if you can go back to the other slide, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here tonight. And today I'm going to be speaking to you about the public health impacts of concrete batch plant emissions. And as you can see on the slide, concrete batch plants are plants that mix water, cement, fine aggregate, coarse aggregate, supplementary materials to form concrete. Emissions from these concrete batch plants constitute a variety of sources of pollution, which range from air pollution, water pollution, noise, nuisance, solid waste generation, and alike nuisance. Next slide, please. So in terms of air pollution, these plants do produce an abundance of dust, which contains very tiny particles known as particulate matter. These particles, when inhaled, can pass through the lungs and end up in the bloodstream and cause a lot of health issues. Those that are most at risk of harm from exposure to particulate matter include children, pregnant people, the elderly, and as well as people with chronic disease. Next slide, please. So in terms of health effects, we have short-term exposure and long-term exposure. And short-term exposure could range from, daily exposure of living next to or close by a concrete batch plant. And this could in these short-term exposure from particulate matter pollution can cause things like headaches, dizziness, eye irritation, as well as an increase in hospital admissions for cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks and strokes. They would also worsen the severity of an asthma attack if you're someone that has asthma. Now, the long-term exposure to particulate matter air pollution that could come from the concrete batch plants can cause an increase in the likelihood of or the risk of developing diabetes, lung cancer, and also impaired brain functions. Next slide, please. There are also a lot of other concerns surrounding concrete batch plants, and some include things like property damage and noise pollution. And this noise pollution, specifically from their operations, it could also be a source of dust nuisance, as I said earlier, and part of that dust is PM 2.5. Another concern is light, particularly because a lot of these operations run 24 hours, right? Or run into early hours of the morning or start off really early in the morning and can disrupt the sleep of community members living around those facilities. Increased traffic, can also pose a safety hazard due to the amount of truck traffic on residential streets. Another concern would be water pollution. Wastewater from concrete batch plants may contain pollutants such as cement, sand, and aggregates. And when not properly managed, this polluted wastewater runoff could end up in residential stormwater drains, creeks, and other waterways. Next slide. I think that's my last slide. All right. So to summarize, concrete batch plant emissions are harmful to residential communities surrounding them. And with that, I will pass the ball to Anthony, who would shed more light on the demographics of the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang. So yeah, covering a bit of what the area immediately around Torres Brothers looks like in terms of the the race and ethnicity. It's largely Black and Brown communities, which as tends to be the case, unfortunately, with a lot of these concrete batch plants. And we have a sizable Spanish and Vietnamese speaking population around there as well. Next slide. In terms of the, sensitive land uses, there are several places of worship, schools, including elementary school. And not only that, but also other sources of pollution as well, including concrete batch plants, that we'll cover a bit later. Next slide. So this map goes into more detail about what those sensitive land uses are. So if you see the red rectangle right in the middle of the map, that's the concrete batch plant itself. And all of the blue shapes are residences. So these are people's homes, neighborhoods, apartment complexes. And you can see the closest one is like less than a block away. And even across the street, there's a soccer field. There's also numerous churches which are outlined in yellow. And this, I want to highlight that this screenshot is from the permit application itself. So, the operators of this plan know that their plan is close to residences, close to sensitive land uses, parks, and churches. They're well aware of it, but they still want to renew their permit. Next slide. So this covers a bit more about the specifics of what they want, what the permit authorizes. So the permit will authorize the continued operation of their plant. They're not building a new one, but they're continuing to operate one that's already located there. Um, and the plant will be authorized to produce about 300 cubic yards of concrete per hour, which comes up to about 6,000, which the maximum rate is 6,000 yards per day. And then if we extrapolate that to a year, it's about 8,760 hours per year. But when we dig into their permit, we find out that they actually want to operate around the clock all year. So if they get this permit renewal, it will allow them to operate 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Um, and you can't really complain about that because we can't really submit complaints because uh it's authorized by their permit. Which is why attending this meeting and voicing your concerns is so important. And something else that's really disruptive is that the facility will operate as night as well, which is captured in that screenshot from their permit application where they answered yes to the question, will the facility operate at night? Um, the height of the stockpiles of sand and dust that you see in those pictures, they will have a maximum height of 45 feet, which is pretty high and even higher than the walls that they have um, around the plant. So PCQ can either approve this permit or reject it or ask the facility to amend it. And what we want to do is ask them to amend it and or either reject it. Next slide, please. Something else that we also want to highlight is that this is not like I was saying before, this is not the only concrete batch plant in that neighborhood. Um, the dot to which the arrow is pointing is Torres Brothers, and if we zoom out a little bit more, we see that there are one, two, three, four, five other concrete batch plant in the immediate area of, South Houston, Minnitex, Sunnyside. Um, and I think you need to click one more time. Yes, and then something else that we've also found out recently is that there is a new concrete batch plant that wants to be built, D&D Ready Mix, that will add almost like a fifth or a sixth plant in that area, right to where that arrow is pointing. So Torres Brothers is looking to renew their permit. D&D wants to build a completely new plant, which, when we take into account cumulative impacts, that really adds up to all the particulate matter emissions and all the other contaminants that are in the air in this neighborhood. Next slide, please. Yeah, and now I'll pass it over to Crystal.
Thank you. And and really just to emphasize like why we're also mentioning about D&D, that new construction that's going to be happening is because it's only 1.4 miles away from the one on Fuquay Street with this permit renewal that we're talking about. And so if, like Anthony said, really emphasizing that there would be six within that area, but that if D&D goes through, which is that new permit that we're considering, that'd be five on the same street. And so we definitely really need everybody's support to advocate against these concrete batch plants, but also just always mentioning the TCEQ to consider cumulative health impacts, and that this area should not, we don't need any more new concrete batch plants in the area. And so, speaking about the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they are the environmental agency for Texas that's responsible for the planning, permitting, and monitoring of environmental projects. Next, like if you click again, please. So they are responsible for our air. You can click two more times. Land and water. And our permits are particularly pertaining to air. And so at the public meeting process, when we go to TCEQ, I do recommend that everybody comes 15 minutes early so that you are able to register and make sure that you sign up to TCQ's mailing list because that is the way that they will send you their decision about this concrete batch plant, and any decisions that they make on a permit. And this would be for any public meeting that you attend that's hosted by TCEQ. They will also have interpretation available. If you click one more time, within the first 30 minutes of the meeting, it is not recorded, so you're able to ask questions. And this is the moment when TCEQ staff, as well as the permit applicants, so in this case, Torres Brothers Ready Mixes representatives, will be there to answer your questions. It is very conversational. But then the formal recorded portion of the meeting is when they call you up to the microphone and you have 5 minutes to share your story and your testimony. And then if you didn't sign up, you still are able to sign up. But this meeting does last about 2 to 3 hours. And then DCQ will then send you in your mailbox a formal decision that they've made on the application. Right. And I just wanted to show you what this looks like. We definitely would need your help to make sure that so many people show up as well, to show that we are watching and showing that this all the industries in the area currently that we are watching and that we do want clean air and just a safer community. Next, please. All right. So in your narrative, we recommend sharing your name and then saying how far you live from Torres Brothers Ready Mix. TCQ does also prioritize like anybody that is immediately impacted. From the pictures that Anthony was showing us, Air Alliance typically does a 1 mile radius of impacted community members from the facility, but on the applicants only need to do about half a mile. And so when you were seeing the screenshot that we had of the red property line and then the circle that they had, it's only within half a mile. And within the application, the applicants already know how many residents live in that area. So they are highly aware that there are nursing centers nearby and childcare centers nearby. And but we want to make sure that they know that we are watching them and that we also really care and we don't want everyone's health to get impacted by the air pollutants. So with that, just sharing how this has impacted you, if you've seen dust flying from their property line over anywhere else. And next slide, please. And so some recommendations that we have is to write or share within your public comments online or in person that TCEQ should require this permit to be renewed under the most stringent 2024 concrete batch plant standard permit. And we did also want to mention that Torres Brothers has a history of noncompliance. They have an undergoing lawsuit from the Harris County Attorney's Office that was filed in August and has exhibits from the Harris County Pollution Control as well, saying that of the many times that they have visited Torres Brothers facility, they have been non-compliant. And so we do have the support of the at county level to ask TCEQ not to renew this permit at all. That TCEQ should definitely reject this permit. And yeah, and so if you wanted to describe any negative impacts you've had, and motivating your neighbors as well to share their story. And then, Anthony, do you want to add anything about the Harris County Attorney's Office current lawsuit against Torres Brothers Ready Mix?
Um, no, I think you covered it all. I just wanted to mention that there's also in the lawsuit, the county attorney mentions that um the plant is under a quote unquote corporate forfeiture, which means that the Texas Secretary of State issued a forfeiture against the plant. So they're technically no longer authorized to even exist or do business in the state of Texas. And the lawsuit quotes that as one of the reasons why the permit shouldn't be issued.
Yeah. And then this slide. So these are definitely more general. This is if you are in a community that does have concrete batch plants or any of the facilities that we mentioned that is disrupting you really, like for concrete batch plants, for instance, we mentioned the dust, and we do know community members that will get inundated with dust flying onto their cars or their homes. And so in these cases, when that's happening constantly and it's being a nuisance, if you of yourself, if you're experiencing it or you know other people, I'd highly recommend sharing these would I will be sending y'all this as well, but these are links to submit a complaint in English or in Spanish to TCEQ about what you're experiencing. So they'll ask the date that this was observed, the approximate time, and the location, and what type of environmental complaint are you filing. And so it is straightforward. But if you need to call, you can also call at their Houston regional office number, which is what I have and on the slide. But yeah, so those are also QR codes if you want to do it digitally. And then when I share the presentation, you'll have the link as well to access the TCQ's complaint form. Next slide, please. And so we mentioned submitting public comments. This is a QR code that goes straight to the TCQ's website where you will have to share personal information, but that does not like, regardless of status or anything like that, that does not affect you. They just will ask you for your information, and then you are able to share your public comment online. You will type in the permit number, which is 72039, and please comment by Monday, November 18th, which is when the public meeting is happening. If you click for me, please. So the public meeting is going to be on Monday, November 18th at 7 p.m. at the Haram Clark Multi-Center Service Center, 3810 W Fuqua Street. And we are really excited, and we definitely look forward to having y'all there to advocate alongside us. And so please share this with community members and with anyone that you know, because air pollution does impact everybody. Air is not stagnant. And so we want to stand with you as well as stand with communities. And if we can all collaborate together, that would be amazing. And next slide, please. And I want to pause here for questions before I kind of like also share about airmail.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I was late. I have a quick question. You might have already covered it. Are you going to be sharing these slides?
Yes, I will be sharing
Oh,
these
perfect.
slides
Thank
as
you.
well as the flyers that we have separately that you were able to share with community members of, of when the public meeting date is.
Do you have also, are you also going to be um sending flyers or anything physically to the community that live within a half a mile or a mile, stuffing their mailboxes or anything by chance?
So last week we actually did send out air mails. Oh, I wish I had a picture of it. But we have postcards that we send to residents that live within a mile of the
Oh,
facility. So last week that just got sent out with the public meeting date.
okay, great.
Yeah. So if you know anybody in that area as well, tell them to look out for our postcards.
Will do.
Thank you. And speaking of postcards, the reason why I have this slide up about airmail is because this is the Genesis, do you need to click on the slide itself? I have it linked to airmail, but if not, oh, okay. Airmail, like the blue on top. I hope it goes through. Okay, yes, thank you. So, the reason why I have this slide up is because airmail is an extension from the Airlines Houston's website. We utilize this tool to know when a ongoing permit is happening. So either renewal or any ongoing oh sorry, either a renewal or like a brand new facility that is trying to be built within the Houston area. Then that's how we're able to notify you. So Jen, if you're able to click on that blue
So you
on the
track
side.
new applications, is that what you're saying, Crystal?
Yes, so new
Okay.
applications as well as permit renewals and any of the blue ones are the ones that are active. Um, but Genesis, so you can click on the one that's blue but in the south side of Houston. Go down. Yes, that one. You click on that one. So as you see, uh, any of facilities that are applying for a permit through TCEQ, it will automatically show up on our airmail, which is why we were able to notice about Torres Brothers Ready mix. And then within a mile radius, that's when we send postcards. Well, we'll send postcards within a mile radius. And so if you look onto like on this right side, where it's saying the public meeting is on Monday, and then submitting a public comment, we do have all of that information as well as viewing any notices about the permit. And so I feel like this is definitely a really great tool. Um, and this is something that you can also monitor for your own community. If it's outside of currently we are only like mostly focused on Harris County and the Houston area. But if it goes outside of those lines, like just let us know. We could also support um, in helping you with that process. Yeah. So, oh yes, go ahead, Teresa. Teresa.
Okay, I live 2.7 miles out away from Torres Brothers. Will will it be effective for me as a community member that lives that far away to say or complain? Not that I'm
Yeah.
not going to anyway, but I mean, is that something scientifically the TCEQ will disregard as a community member and say, no, your opinion will not be considered because you are uh, um outside of its health impact radius, Yvonne? In Yang? Yes, no?
So Teresa, I'll say go ahead. Because I mean, you said you're over 2 miles away, still,
Yes.
depending on wind direction, it can still blow it over, all that dust can still blow over to your area. So I think you're well within your right to go ahead and submit a comment. And
Okay.
yes, so scientifically, yes, it's possible, depending on the wind direction. So
Oh, yeah, I was wondering, scientifically speaking, research wise, if they would take that into consideration. Again, not that I'm not going to complain because I am. I'm going to send in a comment, and
right.
it's not a complaint.
Yeah.
It's a right to breathe
Yes,
clean air. Um,
absolutely.
so, and another thing was I was going to state that a family member was recently hospitalized and the the diagnosis was, couldn't find one that was, well, they found one that was relevant to this discussion, which is environmentally induced COPD.
Hmm.
So
That's it. That's
I
your
was going
story
to,
right there.
and
Yeah.
I was going to state that because even though I am 2.7 miles, almost maybe 3 miles, it's obviously affecting our families here
Yes.
that's farther away. And this is not the only concrete plant along there.
Yeah.
So I
It's
think,
cumulative effects, it's not
yeah,
just, yeah.
yeah. And it's, we're older people, so we've been here for like 20 years, over 20 years. So yeah, it has, I mean, it's not, we didn't have allergies before.
Yeah.
So just as a, and I'm saying sharing that for others on the call that might not be within the mile or half a mile radius. As In Yang was saying, or the staff is saying, these are cumulative effects, and we just never know. And the more vulnerable population, like the babies and the older people, are the ones that are going to be suffering from the cumulative effects. So just as a I guess a lookout and a shared experience, just because you might not be coughing now or you don't think it's affecting you now,
Yeah.
it might or will later.
Thank you for sharing such a powerful sentiment. I'm really, really glad that you're here tonight. And that's why we're making sure to work very hard to just get all Houstonians out to any public meeting that's affecting their area. And just right now we're focusing on the one that's for on Monday, coming up in 2 weeks. And then, okay, so that is airmail. You're able to get to that off of the Airlines Houston website. And then, if you go back to and then next slide, please. Alrighty, and if you haven't already, please join our newsletter. We do focus on getting the zip code, like your zip code, because in instances like this, when your area is impacted, then we will email you as well to let you know anything that's affecting in your area. I promise we do not spam you. It'll be like once a month or not even. It's just if your area is impacted. And so I do would appreciate if y'all did sign up for the newsletter. Yes, Teresa.
Sorry. I was just
No, no, I'm
ask
here for you.
the when I signed up for this, I had to send information. Will you be taking that information, or do I need to re-sign up for the or sign up for the newsletter separately?
No, you don't have to. If we already have you in the system, that is great. And also, when you signed up today, to attend the public or to attend this prep session, I already also have your email, so
Okay.
we'll
So
send that.
everybody on here that came on or put in their information doesn't have to do it again. So you're already on their list as an
Oh,
airline.
I'm sorry. No, actually, I think yeah, you should definitely still. I
Okay.
thought you were saying that you had already received our a separate email from us, but no, if you haven't already,
Okay.
then
That's
please
yeah,
go ahead
let's
and.
clarify that so people just because you have our information from this meeting, that doesn't mean we're going to be so I need to go and join your newsletter separately. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for helping me clarify that. Staff also, could somebody support me to put the Airlines Houston newsletter sign-in sheet into the chat so that we can make it easily accessible for everyone to sign up through their devices?
Oh, that would be great since we're here already. Yes, thank you so much.
All right, Anthony just put it in the chat.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right, and that concludes our presentation today. I did want to give time for anybody that has questions. Thank you for sharing your screen and being an interpreter today too.